Welcome to Off Script. I am your host, Will May.
And I am Ashley, and we are here to discuss the full disclosure of what it takes to thrive in real estate while balancing family, work, life, and everything in between.
Everything. Okay, we're having some fun today. We talked to ChatGPT, and it said, lighten it up a little with this episode. So we're actually going to do some situation-based. So you're going to do more, it's listing life versus leadership life.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is present, you have not been prepped on this all the way. We're going to present situations that you may run into, and what we want to go over is what's your plan and what would you say?
Okay.
So kind of like this scripting behind, here's the situation we're in, this is what I want to be the outcome, and this is how I'll go about getting there.
Okay.
Cool?
Yep.
Ready for your first one? Iced coffee you're drinking there. Okay. The first one is, for you on a listing side, your CMA says $450 is the price of this home. Seller says, no, $525 is where I want to list because Zillow says that's what it's worth.
Ooh.
What's the plan and what do you say?
Have we already done a pre-listing call?
Yep, you're at the, you've actually even went through all of your comps with them.
Okay. So we've already set expectation. We've gone through comps. We're $75,000 off in price.
Yep.
Okay. Well, first, I would probably just start by asking a question maybe of like, how did you get to that number? I know you're seeing it on Zillow, but I just reviewed all of the comps, showed you the data, showed you what things are selling for, showed you the pictures. Based on seeing the data and what I've presented to you, can you tell me kind of how you're still coming up with that number when we have some of this facts right in front of you? And I would just like ask them directly to make them respond to that would be my first approach.
Love that.
In like a kind way, right? We want to back the sellers into them coming to the realization of what that home should be listed at so that you're not position yourself, you versus them, as the bad guy as the listing agent.
No doubt. I think that's where a lot of people struggle. We worked on this in scripts actually yesterday. Things that we end up telling our sellers, doing it in question form. So I think that's the approach kind of you're taking, right? So why ask them questions versus telling them like, this isn't right?
Well, I mean, I think it's human nature we have like competitiveness and the want to be right by nature, regardless of if somebody's on your team. So when you're coming at somebody, telling them what to do and just speaking and not asking questions and trying to understand their perspective, then it's always going to come off as like a me versus you situation. And then they're going to get competitive with you and like want to be right. It almost anchors them deeper in their position if you don't ask them questions for them to come to that realization. So I would foreshadow. I mean, I do a lot of foreshadowing and listing appointments of, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if we want to list at $75,000 too high, and here's the data of what happens when we list a house too high, those days on market tick up, our offers tend to be lower. We have that whole conversation like, are you okay with that? Are you okay with it sitting on the market for 4 months or whatever that data may look like instead of 3 weeks on market, which is our average? Are you okay with that? And I think at the end of the day, like, you're never the bad guy if you set realistic expectations with them and you tell them exactly what's going to happen if they take a certain approach and then how you're going to handle it when that happens. So that if and when that happens and it is overpriced and you're having to reposition or relist the house at a lower price, you can circle back to that conversation you had at the listing appointment.
I love that. And I think that's a key part of it. Foreshadowing what could happen if, a future state of pain, if this goes this way. You're right. Nobody wants to be told what to do. And then number two, as long as you cover your what your data is showing or what your plan is, saying this is what I firmly think, and if it doesn't work, this is what's going to need to happen, the results of what you're planning to do.
Yeah, and I think like you have to also be able to walk away from a listing if you're dealing with an unreasonable seller. So I think if you've gone through all the foreshadowing, all of the data, all of the reasons why, and then you're just not necessarily maybe dealing with a reasonable seller. I mean, if you're in a lower price point and you're listing a house $100,000 over what it's worth just because you want to take that listing, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't even take the listing. So first and foremost, I would try and work through it with the seller. And if we're really still to a point of that much of unreasonability, like that's also foreshadowing what my entire experience with that seller is going to be throughout that transaction.
That's right. I love that. Okay, you got number two?
Okay.
Moving on.
Well, we're not going to be asking you listing questions, so more in your world. On the coaching side, an agent has not shown up to a team meeting in 3 weeks. They're producing but disconnected. What's your plan?
Yeah, so my first thought is the plan or the outcome I'm wanting is to re-engage them. So for me, it's understanding what's happening. So most, like for our agents and anybody that I coach, like studying their behaviors is very important. So if it's uncommon for them to be showing up, if they're producing, it's likely because they feel busy. What happens if they stop showing up and doing the things or having the routine that got them busy is that roller coaster that we always talk about. So I come to scripts and role play, I come to team meetings, I'm engaged, I get busy, then I stop coming, and then guess what happens? Pipeline falls apart. So for me, it's asking really good questions to figure out and understand why is this happening, and every agent is different. So for some of them, it's very common for them to get busy and then family takes over, or I just have so many showings, or I just have inspections and different things that keep popping up. And so you allow it to happen for a little bit, but it's also, taking them back to what got them busy and foreshadowing. Same thing as what you just said. Hey, what we've seen in the past from agents and from you specifically, from most of them that have been with us for a while, when we stop engaging, what happens 30 to 60 days from now is that our pipeline starts to, become there's not very many people in your pipeline. Do we want to avoid that? Is that something that we're heading towards? Do you remember this happening last time? And just finding a way to re-engage them. If it's not something like the disconnect is generally they're either unhappy or they're busy. And so helping them understand what happens when they stop coming and being engaged is super important.
What if it's me who's doing that? How do you handle me?
I don't say anything. All right, so let's move.
So if I stop coming to coaching for 3 weeks, you just leave it alone?
Well, the conversations with you have changed for sure. So obviously I have a very good understanding of what you're going through, and a lot of the things that we talk about when it comes to engagement and coaching you specifically happens on the fly. So I don't need as many coaching sessions. Like you'll probably skip every other week our 1 hour block, but we have several conversations. I feel like that tie us back to our vision, what we're doing and bringing you back into the office. But you being the leader of the pack, right? When you don't show up, nobody else, you'll start to see if you go down to one time you're showing up to script and role play a week, within 2 weeks, everybody else is starting to miss. So speed of the leader, speed of the pack.
That's right.
Okay. Ready for your next one?
I'm ready.
All right. Listing goes live tomorrow, but the carpets and litter boxes were not cleaned. It's not ready. Maybe smells. Not in a good place. Oof. What is your plan and what do you say?
Well, you have to address it. I think you have to say something and have the hard conversation with the seller and bring awareness to it, because my job at the end of the day is trying to represent them and my fiduciary responsibilities to them, and I also want to try and net them the most money. So sometimes in order to do that, you have to have difficult conversations with sellers and tell them what they don't necessarily want to hear, that there's a pet order, or there's a sense, or the photos didn't turn around because you didn't move these items, and I would have to push the listing back. I would communicate that to them and the reason why and why we're doing so. And that's because we want to position their listing in the best light so we can get top dollar for them. And then I would just address the things right up front. And it's super uncomfortable. I feel like whenever it's something with like religious artifacts, cat, dog odors, things that are like very personal to people, those are never easy conversations to have. But I think that's kind of the difference between like your average agent and a great agent, is the great agent's willing to have the really difficult conversations, because it's all going back to foreshadowing, because it's like you can foreshadow the future of what's going to happen if we don't just have this conversation now.
Yeah.
And then you're the bad guy later, or they're mad because their listing's not selling. And why? Because you didn't have the courage to have the conversation ahead of time with them and get ahead of those situations.
Which is so common.
Yeah, it's very common. I mean, I still struggle with it today sometimes. I always do it. But like sometimes I'm like, 3 hours before I pick up the phone and call them, and I procrastinate. I'm like, I just don't want to have this conversation.
Yeah, no. There's that fly. And the big part of this with foreshadowing is leaning on past experience, right? So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. How does this conversation start? Like, if you are leaning on past experiences of things that you've seen in the past, how do you even have the conversation with the seller or start it?
I did have this situation happen, and we ended up having to replace the carpet. So I would probably say something along the lines of, hey, I've been in a similar situation in the past. Like, I understand it's frustrating. We're having to push the listing date back. So I understand how you feel. A lot of sellers have felt this way when similar situations have happened in the past. But one thing I found is when we do the right thing, push it back, take care of the issues, like we end up in a much better position and getting your home sold quicker. What happened with the last seller of mine that didn't do this was we got a lot of negative feedback on the listing. It smelled like pet odor because We had the conversation. They didn't want to replace the carpets. We had a really difficult time selling it. We did a couple of price reductions. And ultimately, it sat kind of stale on the market for a while. We went in, canceled the listing, put in the new carpets, relisted it, and we actually ended up making more on the sale than what we had done our lowest price reduction to. We listed a little bit higher after we did the carpets, and we ended up getting an over asking offer. And there was still only one offer that came in. But regardless, like, it all worked out just because they took the feedback and they were able to, relist it at that point. So my conversation would just use an example of somebody in the past and what didn't go well, what they changed, and then how it obviously did go well, so that hopefully they make the right decision from the beginning.
Yeah, agent leadership, tough conversation hack. When you start the conversation, just simply say, is it okay if we have a hard combo? This isn't a fun conversation for me to have.
Yeah.
You're foreshadowing doom, right? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh, that was the hard combo. Is there anything else? And you're like, no, sorry, just some people don't take to these conversations very well, which automatically puts them in a position of, I don't want to be the defensive one. I want to be able to help out the situation.
Yeah, I think the vulnerability with sellers actually works really, really well, and something you should just do is like, hey, I don't want to have this conversation. This is uncomfortable for both of us, but I want to get ahead of it here. And like, I think you just being vulnerable and saying that immediately lets their guards down, because unless you know the seller really, really well and it's a family or sphere, sometimes I haven't been able to build up a lot of rapport with them outside of that 1 hour at the listing appointment, going through their property. So it's like, I don't know this person really well. They're still kind of on the defense with me, and unless I let my guard down and like open that conversation.
Yep, 100%. Okay, love it.
Okay. Will, let's see. A transaction error cost a closing. Ooh. The agent is blaming the TC team. What's your plan and what do you say?
Dang it, Miranda. To me, I feel like it's just figuring out the whole situation. If one of our agents is blaming a TC team, that they probably don't align with us. They lead the ship. They're the one that's in control of everything, and our vendors, everybody that's involved in the transaction is underneath their guidance, because they're the one driving the boat. So for me, it's to give perspective. First of all, hey, I know we're frustrated in the situation. If we're going to be hitting the goals that we're going to be hitting, we're going to come across situations like this. So let's remove the emotion from it. Although it seems like it's the end of the world. You wanted to sell 24 to 35 houses, let's say, this year. When we get to this level where we're excelling and succeeding at a high level, not everything's going to go perfect. And we got to look at where we could have done things differently. So TC team did something wrong. What was your part in it? How can we get ahead of this next time? And how can we set expectations and take this as a learning moment? Because oftentimes our biggest failures become moments that make us tens and twenties of thousands of dollars over time by saving deals in the future because we learned from the situation. And then it's about having the right conversations and making it right. Whether it was somebody, TC team, or keying them out. Whether it was that team that did something wrong, it's about having a really good conversation. So number one, it doesn't happen again, and you're right by your clients, and you continue moving forward, hopefully with the same person and making it right.
Yeah. I would agree with all of that. I feel like if you just can stay in a growth mindset and, like you said, try and learn from the situation, I often see people when something bad happens or a situation happens, they'll never ever be in that situation again. They'll avoid anything that's related to that again. Like, this happened with this one situation, so it's a similar one, so I'm not going to do this deal. Or I'm not going to take care of this lead, or I'm not going to do this because this one thing happened this one time, so it's going to happen with every single transaction that I ever do with anybody like this.
Yeah, no, it's funny because as agents, we get like fixated, especially if you're a perfectionist, and most high performers have some strand of that, right? Like, want to have everything go exactly right for our clients. We had a situation with one of our agents on a team that one of her past clients sold or bought with somebody else. She found out about it several months later, and it became something that was like, she couldn't rationalize. Like, why would this happen? And then put all of it back on herself. And I think the perspective that we have to pull out of is, hey, the 5 months leading up to today, did you know about this? Were you happy during those 5 months? We've now, been fixated on this for 2-3 days. Some agents will be weeks, right? Do we feel like that's the right way to go about this? And as we grow more and more, what could we have done differently? And how can we avoid that happening again? Right? Like, as you sell more houses and you touch and connect with more people, it's just going to happen. Like, failures and losses are going to happen. How can we get better from them? and fix this moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Cool?
Yep.
All right. Off to number 5. You have 5 offers.
Ooh.
Seller wants to counter them all just to see what happens.
Oh, well, we can't.
What's your plan and what do you say?
I mean, first you have to educate them. You can't counter 5 offers all at the same time, because my first question would be, what happens if they all accept? So I would just ask a question.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What would happen if they all accept, Mr. Seller?
Oh, boy.
Oh, now you're under contract with 5 people, and we got probably 4 lawsuits on our hands. So no, I would start with educating them. But in a 5 offer situation, you know, again, I'm advising them too that we go back to all offers, and instead of starting with even countering our highest, just say we'll review offers at X time on this day, bring your highest and best. And you're obviously going to have better offers that come through, or some escalation clauses in there, and be able to kind of pin those offers against each other and net them top dollar. So it really just comes back to education.
Yeah. What if there's like one clear best offer, right? And they're like, it's like one of those offers that's so clear you should take this, you don't want to lose it, and the other 4 don't even compete, or 2 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you guide that? Like, oh, let's use these to push this one even higher, like getting greedy.
Well, I mean, I do that kind of naturally for them before I even present the offers. I kind of am letting the buyer's agents know, hey, I got 3 other offers in hands. I'm not telling them the exact terms of it, but people will ask questions. Is mine competitive? Like, no, you're going to have to come up if you want to be competitive with the other offers. I'm not necessarily telling them all of the terms and what's happening in there, but that's what I'm doing, is I'm leveraging the other offers against each other to drive that price up for my seller. So that's kind of naturally happening. And then I'm explaining that to my seller before I even bring them the offers. Like, here's what's happening on the back end. And then when I bring this to you, this is already like highest and best from everybody, because I'm already communicating and doing all of this before we have everything final and in writing.
Okay, but so let's go to that person.
Okay.
Or I think you actually had something similar to this recently. But they're like, okay, you've already vetted everybody, you pushed it as high as possible, and they still want to do more. Like,
oh, yeah. Okay, so that happened about 2 weeks ago. So that situation was, we were 2 days on market. I think we ended up with like 3 offers, a pretty clear high. I mean, it was over asking, no inspections, quick close. Like, it was a beautiful offer. You can't really get much better of a cleaner offer above asking. I also had information, which I shared with my sellers, that 2 comps down the street appraised lower than what we have a contract price at. So like, this is probably the best we're going to get. And even if we were going to get higher, the house may not appraise.
It's super common for sellers to feel like it's so early.
Yep. So I explained that to them. Feel, felt, found method. Use this a lot. Like, I understand how you feel. It's not uncommon for sellers to feel this way, that, well, I already got high offers 1 day on market. Like, I don't want to accept already. It's too early. Let's see if we get better ones. But one thing I've found, so I use that same method with them, the feel, felt, found method. But one thing I've found is when sellers do that, and we don't end up working with one of these offers that comes in initially, is that those days on market start to go up. We lose out on these offers and these interest. And now your next offer that comes in tends to be under asking, or it might be at asking, but it's definitely not going to be over, because we've lost that momentum of the multi-offer situation. And why would a buyer pay over asking on a house when they're now the only offer? There's not competition against them. So when I explained this to him and was like, this is what happens, and here's what most likely will happen if we don't work with one of these, and I will fully support you if that's what you want to do, but are you okay with, if that happens and we end up not getting an at asking or an over asking offer, we're now in a position we're probably going to have to accept that because it's the best we're going to get.
Yep.
And once I kind of foreshadowed, I feel like we've said this on every answer, foreshadowed that could happen, and are we okay with that, and make the seller answer that question. If they're okay with that, then they're okay with that, right? You have to do your job as an agent, and I mean, at the end of the day, you educate them, you present everything, but you have to do what your seller wants. Most of the time, they make the right decision, though, if you're guiding them the right way.
Yep. Future state of pain. You'll see that we talk about a lot in our script and role play sessions. If you put somebody in a future state of pain and allow them to answer the question, that's how you can vet out an objection or a condition or greediness or different things that we call it greediness, but things that are super common to think, right? Like, oh, if only one day I got this, imagine day 2.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's such a good, it's again, like a scripting hack.
Yeah, I think it also comes to knowing that specific person's motivation, and that's why these questions are hard without like sharing all the context, because I knew he was already under contract on his next home. I knew he didn't want to carry 2 mortgage payments. Like, we have all of these pieces of information that I'm now using as part of that conversation to help guide him. Like, hey, what if we don't get a better offer and now our next offer can't close for X amount of days? Are you good with carrying 2 mortgages? Are you good with this? That's that future point of pain that you're talking about. And I think those are all the things that sellers aren't thinking about when they're just like in that high emotional state of like the excitement of the initial launch of their listing. And in my experience, you just almost never get as good as your first couple of offers. They just go down from there.
Great answer.
Okay, you're up. Let's see. Okay, you've got hot buyer leads, Will.
Oh gosh, we skipped it. Okay, there we go.
But only a brand new agent is available to hand one off to. What's your plan? What do you say to them, to that agent or the rest of the team?
Yes, we are going to guide them. So for me, if we had a newer agent that was available and active and ready to work a lead, I think the biggest thing in that situation is, how can I find the best outcome? How can I get a win for this person? So I'm not too worried about when it comes to the rest of the team, right? Like if we have a new agent working a lead, I'm going to probably just be way more hands-on with them and talk with them throughout it. Know that I'm getting into a situation that is going to be more, take more of my time, but I'm going to use that time over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to guide, train them so that future situations like that are going to be much easier to handle. So I feel like this, for me, this is a pretty easy answer because I'm just going to be super hands-on, guide them through the process, answer all their questions, but do it in a way that the next time I don't have to do it again.
Yeah. Do you have a hard time not just wanting to do it yourself? Because you talk a lot about how important these leads are because our ISA teams are getting bonuses and a lot of their living is made off of like us converting. They rely on us converting to help them support their family. So do you ever, like, does that ever make you nervous?
I've gotten really good at this now. When I was actively in sales, in like when we had our team in Huntington Beach, or when I'm coaching brand new, right? Like, yes, it is hard because I want to be like, say this. So the most I'll do is just get on the phone with them and tell them what to say. Mute it. Say this. Write down. Say this.
You get a reel of you guys doing that on a live call.
Yeah. So I've done that with a lot of different situations. I've done with Anthony, a couple of our agents on the team. But if we find ourselves in a situation where it's like, we got to convert this. This is super important. They're worried, frustrated. Hey, this is going to be uncomfortable. You're probably going to mess up. Give them that, like, give them a feeling of okay to fail environment, and then guide them through, like, this is exactly what to say. Mute it. If we screw it up, it's totally fine. And make sure that they know that before we even start. Hit the freaking call button. Go. Say this, say this, say this. And that's like the most hands-on I'll get.
You've been giving off leads to one of our newer agents, and she's converted 2 of the 3 already.
2, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we got 2 appointments set. One of them signed, a duplex, and then the next one we're signing hopefully here coming up soon. So, and she's newer to these leads as well, but she Chapin killed it. She took them, ran with it, set the appointments. She's like, I set the appointment, but it's not till June 2nd. It's like 3 weeks from now. I'm like, that's great. Good job. Okay, let's get 2 more in. Okay. One for you, one for me. So the seller hates the professional photos, Lance, and says, this doesn't feel like my home.
Ooh. Well, it's probably not going to be because of the photos if they say it doesn't feel like their home. It's probably going to be because of the staging, or we've asked them to declutter their home. That's usually the feedback that I get. I've had that happen several times. Sellers live a very specific way, as they should. It's your home that you live in, but our job is to present the home so that it appeals to the masses, to the average person who can see past memorabilia and religious artifacts and crazy colored walls and quirkiness and all of that. Although,
which made it home.
It makes it your home for sure, but our job is to almost kind of like unhome your home and make it look more like a hotel.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon for sellers to feel that way, but I feel like every answer to this is literally foreshadow. But you foreshadow that. That is part of actually one of the conversations that Asia and I have with people at the listing table is, after we leave here today, Asia's going to come back and go through her staging consult with you, and she's going to have you declutter rooms and take things down. It's going to feel very emotional and a little bit less like a home because we're taking children's photos down off and all of the things off of your refrigerator, and we're going through that. We're kind of foreshadowing that at the listing table of like, I know it's not going to feel like home. We're going to be replacing it with things that appeal to the masses that aren't going to feel like yours, but here's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And I think when you can connect the dots for people, explain the why, and show them the outcome that they're going to receive from this, then that makes that conversation a lot easier. And I really don't get any pushback once you kind of go through that with them.
Yeah. What is that? I mean, for you, when you're at the table, how do you put them in the eyes of a buyer? Like, how do you get them to pull out of their lens and see what they're selling to?
Well, you can show them other listing photos. I would show them a photo of a listing that's really decluttered, like a good, like really, really cluttered, and show them the clear difference between the two and ask them to choose. So put them in the seat of the buyer of like, these are the same price house. Which one are you more likely to go click on first and want to go tour?
Ooh.
And then it's easy to do that because they've just chosen the answer themselves.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
So pull them out.
Pull them out.
This is what would you choose?
Another thing that I've done before, even just for sellers when I leave the house, if they're like, I'm not sure if I should declutter this, they like to get ahead of it before we do the walkthrough, so they already start texting me. And I say, just take your iPhone and take a picture of the photo yourself. Like, it's not obviously a professional photo, and then look at it and like go through it as if it was on the MLS right now and you were gonna go look at this house. Like, does it look cluttered? Is there stuff everywhere? Like, it's so much easier to visualize it when you see it on a photo of like what stuff needs moved than just looking at a room. So I tell them just take pictures on their iPhone and then remove stuff from there.
You do that?
Yeah.
I'm learning this right now. What a good tip.
Yeah. Okay.
Last one. All
right. Well, someone tells you a team member is thinking of leaving. What is your plan and what do you say, if anything, to the agent?
I've gotten really experienced at having tough combos. I feel like being in leadership for the last 5 years, with ups and downs and just knowing people want different things, right? So there's a really good book that I read called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And if something's repetitively coming up in your life that's challenging and we just continue to avoid it, it's likely that we need to go towards it instead of run from it in order to grow. So for me, like these conversations aren't challenging for me, for the person that told me or for the person I'm talking to, because number one, transparency is key in our brokerage. I said it right. Transparency is everything. So like if somebody's telling me something, it's probably something that I'm going to address. So if there's an elephant in the room, I'm going directly at it with confidence and understanding that like I'm here to help you. So we're going to have a heart to heart. We're going to figure out what's going on. I'm just going to bring it up and be very direct, because once we address it, it becomes a much more open conversation. And not that people don't like to have those difficult conversations. They just don't like to start them. Yeah. And if we start them and ask really good questions and understand the thought process, there's probably a reason why they're thinking this is something that they want to do or a change needs to happen. And sometimes that's totally out of my control, totally out of our control. And that's the right thing for them to do. So for me, I have to take off my like toast team leader coach hat and just be there for the person. I know them. I know what they've been through. I've obviously spent time with them. And if this is the right move for them, perfect. Like, let's support them, guide them, and help them get to there. And if it's something that can be changed, let's see if we can't make that change, buy a little bit of time to see if anything gets different, and then continue to move forward. I think where leaders really struggle is they'll waver on their standards in order to keep somebody. And that's not something that we're willing to do. If we can add more value or create a different value add that they're looking for in order to help them succeed, okay, it's perfect for us to stay. But if we're trying to give more money, change our splits, change our standards for one person, they're not the right person for our environment and for our culture.
So good. I don't even have anything to say to that. That's so good. It really is. And we've talked a lot about that, of not wavering and not changing our standards. And it's hard. I feel like you're like faced with more and more situations and more things that keep coming up of like, should we bend on this? Should we do this? And so I like that you just said that, because it's so true. And once you do it for one, then it's expected for all.
For everybody. So you gotta look at these things that need to change, and can we make the differences? Can we make the changes for everybody? And if we can't, it's not right. Okay, cool. Well, I hope this was a helpful episode of just different situations you'll run into as an agent. Team leaders, you're going to run into the stuff that I kind of talked about. Anything else you want to add here?
No, I think we should like take requests for situations of like scripting and stuff. That'd be fun.
Live.
Like,
that'd be fun.
Do a live or just take requests of situations that have came up with agents.
Yeah, perfect. Our commission models are on our Stand store. Check them out. We're starting bringing people into the brokerage in June, so we'd love to talk with you if it's something that you're looking at. See you guys next week.
See ya.